Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or whatever time it is. Good evening, good day, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us in this edition of Let's Read with Nico and Led.
That's Led. I'm
How you doing,
Nico.
Nico?
I am sitting down, and I'm actually on the bed. I'm not sitting down. I'm a liar.
You filthy liar. I am sitting down, you filthy casual.
Well, in
I
this
have no
case,
idea what you...
in this case, we're gonna read a fanfic that in my case, because I'm the one who chose it, I actually have a reason for choosing it for a change.
And what is that reason, Nico?
The reason is because this is actually one of my favorite concepts for stories ever. Because one of my favorite kind of stories are the ones that it shows you the story and then it shows you like the different ways the story can go. So I know it's very hard to do that in like, for example, in books or in movies, unless it's like one day, you know, for obvious reasons. Because if you show
Yes.
like a whole month, then it's going to take a long time to show every single change because unless it's a day. And one of my favorite games works completely around that basis. That's called for the like three people that may know. It's called 999, 9 doors, 9 hours, and 9 people. And the sequel that's called Virtue's Last Reward. That the whole concept of those games is to play the game multiple times and see all the different storylines and how they end.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with it, but now you've intrigued me.
Right. So since this is one of my favorite concepts and it's based on Groundhog Day, I think we should give it a chance to see how they
All right.
do it.
All right, well, let's give a read to the author's note. The author put it at the beginning for a reason, I will assume. Shall I read that or shall you, Nico?
Or you should.
Okay. So, author's note. This fanfic is obviously inspired by the movie Groundhog Day, one of my personal favorites, or rather the personal favorite of the author.
Yep.
You'll find that much of the fic mirrors this movie. The idea of a GHD fic is one I've used in other fanfictions, perhaps most famously in certain Naruto fanfictions, which we will never read. I pulled
Who
those
knows?
out
Maybe
because,
sometime.
whatever.
We may never know.
I point those out because while fascinating, at least to start, I always found that they tended to become tangential, or to deviate too strongly from the core element of Groundhog Day.
The question: what does tangential mean?
Tangent means it's going off on something that's not important.
Oh, like a okay, I get it.
Like it's something connected, but it's not important.
Yes, I get it. Go on.
It's like how sometimes we'll get into conversations like these where it doesn't immediately directly relate to whatever we're reading. But
Yeah,
it's a
but it kind of
conversation
relates. Yes, I get it. Go on.
Okay. And to deviate too strongly from the core element of Groundhog Day, which was the existential wonder and emotional growth of the main character. We don't love Groundhog Day because Phil Connors, the inimitable Bill Murray, because of what he learns to do or what powers he has, but because of the person he becomes and how it hints that we too can be more than we are. Having noted this, I knew when I began writing that I had to keep the story focused, yet the setting required a great many changes, alterations, and rethinkings. Compromises and cuts had to be made. Wanted things to have a set beginning and end and not to drag on unnecessarily, telling the story and maintaining the homage that this is to the original movie.
You know that is
Special
very
love and
true. It's
appreciation-
very hard when you write something to stay actually on focus and not, go on tangents, especially depending on the person you are.
'Tis true. Special love and appreciation goes out to Bill Murray and Harold Ramis for giving us this incredible story, the most memorable thing in an otherwise obscure holiday. I hope you enjoy it. Author's note number 2.
This is
I am updating this fic
doesn't matter
after...
because it's finished. So move on. I am updating this page, but it's already finished. So yeah, it's not relevant.
Let us begin.
And before we begin, this is going.
Unmitigated.
You're probably watching at the length of this video, and you're like, holy shit, what the fuck? This first chapter is 12K words, so this is going to take us a long time. I have a drink with me. How about you?
Well, it depends on the speed of reading. Let's begin, shall we? Okay. Unmitigated, unprecedented, unabashed, salvageable disaster. The gala was a disaster. It was, Prince Blueblood reflected as he dragged himself to bed.
Truly the worst night ever.
Took you long enough.
Sorry.
Collapsing face first into the pillows, his body shook with a at least over.
The best night ever. What the fuck?
It's a song.
Oh. I don't know the song, so I know the well.
Equestria girls were kind of
Oh
magical.
yeah, that's
Let's skip that part.
Let's skip that.
An alabaster hoof silenced the infernal electronic device transmitting its unbearable pop sugar sweet ear pollution. Sapphire Shores. He hated Sapphire Shores. What was the radio even doing on that station again? Blueblood found himself on his back, eyes bleary but open, staring up at the delicately tiled ceiling. The damnable machine had done its job and woken him up at least. Pulling his regal and royal self upright, he gently massaged a hoof into his forehead, willing himself to deal with the post-gala fiasco he had abandoned last night. Celestia's triumph, celebrating the glorious founding of Canterlot, overrun by a horde of crazed critters. Rolling out of bed, he paused only to glance outside at the lush palace gardens, and then to rebel to summon the palace grooming staff for his morning routine. It mostly would not do to arrive at breakfast in a disheveled state. An antechamber served this purpose well, and a pair of unicorn mares quickly arrived to groom away the knight's frustrations and prepare him for the supposedly casual meeting he had with his aunts. I don't know why I'm reading this with an accent. It's fun, though.
Just keep going.
Blueblood closed his eyes, not needing to see the servants to gauge their work. They'd been doing this for years, after all, just as he had. The same thing day after day. Similarly, he resisted the impulse to doze off. No, his thoughts turned to the ruined gala, specifically to the foolish mare who had so showered him with low-class cake, and then to the cascade of destruction that had turned the noble menagerie Urse into a house of cards. Compared to the structural and artistic destruction, the stampede of wild animals that followed was really almost an afterthought, an insulting addendum to the devastation. I really like the way this guy writes.
Yeah, this is hilarious.
The royal guards had mysteriously disappeared soon after, leaving dazed and confused noble ponies and guests of honor to stagger around, lost and confused, unable to process the fact that their evening had been so thoroughly ransacked. A tribe of savage griffins could as well have walked through, plucking tapestries from the walls and just from the aristocrats, and not a single pony would have batted an eye.
Well, that's a bit
Would
racist.
you like to say something?
Yeah, that's a bit racist.
I don't think it's racist. It's speciesist, I guess.
Okay, keep going.
Regardless. See, now, if they were saddle Arabians, that would be racist.
Yeah, you're sure. That's true.
Yes. Something would have to be done to mitigate the aftermath. Blueblood mentally prepared to meet with his royal bouteille soon after breakfast as Paul. The image of the gala needed to be repaired. His image, of course, which meant that they needed a patsy. Yes, a public face to blame the disaster on. The socialist circles of Canterlot would do the rest, if given only a room or two. No royal hooves would need to be involved. The question was who to string up. It needed to be someone believable, but also someone already unpopular. The noble families had to subconsciously to blame Pony, or these ponies before Hoof. He would have found a ferric pleasure. I'm familiar with that word. That's new to me. A ferric pleasure in pinning it on heat for the evening, but no one cared about a mare from Ponyville. One didn't bait a tiger with cheese.
I hope he gets punched in the face sometime in this fic.
Oh, be quiet. Dismissing the two groomers with a haughty wave of his hoof, Prince Blueblood glanced for a moment at the near full-body mirror. He looked fine, none the worse for wear, despite last night. The bump on the back of his head had even disappeared. How fortuitous. Now for his attire. Opening the walk-in dressing closet, he saw his shortened dinner jacket, blue bow tie, hanging waiting for him, pressed and prepared. It had been left in a place of honor, with the expectation that he would come for it later tonight. The prince's expression darkened immediately. What was that doing there? Granted, he had many dinner jackets, but he had ordered this one from Hoity specifically for the gala. Last night's gala.
Idiots!
He grumbled, pushing aside the formal wear for a pale silk collar.
I am surrounded by fools and idiots.
The living quarters of the palace opened up to him, but the guard only became noticeable as he approached the pantry and dining hall. Truth be told, the prince was in little mood to see his beloved aunt. Not after her pointed disappearance last night had sounded the death knell for what should have been the most magnificent night of the year.
This is hilarious.
Huh?
This is hilarious.
Why?
I don't know, I just find it too funny.
Okay. He had personally invested much in the entire affair, bringing together select patrons of the arts and arcane who had sought him out as their patron. Now those guests were humiliated, and no doubt silently enraged at the farce the night had become. Lost in his thoughts, paying little heed to his surroundings, Blue Blood sat before the table hosted by his exalted princess aunt. In fact, both of his great aunts were in attendance, a somewhat rare occurrence. Twice in as many days. Blue Blood didn't remember the last time that had happened, but he didn't let it distract him from his sullen displeasure. It was an impotent displeasure as well, for Celestia damn well did as she pleased, and there was little.
Well, she is the ruler of all Equestria, so I guess she can do what she pleases.
'Tis true, and there was little any pony could or would say or do about it. The Princess of the Sun at the head of the table, cheerfully and contentedly munching on low-class oats and apples again. Luna had finished eating what was actually and effectively her dinner, and remained quietly lost in introspection. She often partook of a glass of wine before going to sleep for the day, a rather strange custom, though Blue Blood recognized the vintage of the bottle kept cool by her place on the table. The same as yesterday. A true creature of the night, that one. Not that it was any business of his what she did with herself.
Well,
Blue Blood placed an order for tea with milk and ginger, and freshly imported yucca, which is actually a tasty plant. Got plenty of that out here in Colorado. Waiting for it to arrive, he pondered how he could possibly chide his immortal and all-powerful relative without actually sticking his hoof into the proverbial fire. She looked so irrepressibly yet silently smug about something this morning, like she had some plan or another that she expected to pan out. The last year had been just one thing after another, and Blue Blood had come to associate his aunt's good morning moods with some trouble or another looming appropriately on the horizon.
Prince Bullblood.
A cultured voice interrupted the noble pony's thoughts.
Proper place.
The prince greeted the royal chamberlain and officer of the household. The elderly unicorn was just finishing his meal, and shadowed by his ever-present assistant, the keeper of seals. Not that Blue Blood remembered that pony's name. I trust... Oh, sorry, that's you.
I trust you're looking forward to this evening's gala.
The elderly pony inquired.
I have heard you hire from the Canterlot Chamber Orchestra Company. I look forward to the release of Entry on the Princess in Sunlight.
Blue Blood opened his mouth to agree when he caught what was being said, besides the compliment.
What?
He asked dumbly and quickly shook his head.
What was that just now? The gala, Prince.
Proper place repeated.
I look forward to it.
Instantly suspicious of some sort of joke or trick, the likes of which his dear aunt had become quite fond of recently, Blue Blood glanced back around the room. Sure enough, nobody seemed to be deriving any perverse enjoyment from the conversation, nor were they even interested. It took a moment to settle in, but it quite quickly became clear that all the ponies in attendance were seated and eating at the same places as yesterday. It was normal, really, but also gave him the strangest bit of déjà vu. Even this conversation with proper place. Hadn't they had it yesterday?
Of course.
Blue Blood settled on saying, still a bit wary of some further joke at his expense. He glanced at Celestia once Proper Place finished and excused himself, but aside from whispering something to Luna, the godlike princess hardly seemed interested at all. She was a good actor, to be sure, and could simply be planning some larger joke. Yet it seemed both uncharacteristically rude means not to effectively facilitate the rule of the gala, but then to rub his face in it the next day. It was a celebration in her honor, after all. And in how she had founded Canterlot. She was the sun and the center of their world. His participation was an effort to demonstrate the depth of his affection and admiration for her, while, yes, also furthering the political game of which the lesser mortal royal family was a part. He wanted to speak, to demand to know if something was afoot, but cowered and dared not to.
Get it?
Clever. Instead, he determined not to play along. If Celestia had set things up to mimic the day before, then so be it. It's strange that Proper Place of old ponies would play along, but Prince Blue Blood would not. He would stay in. Night came, and Blue Blood just couldn't believe what was before his eyes. It was the gala. The bloody damned gala from the night before.
What in the starless hells?
The curse was muttered silently as he peeked out the window, observing the procession of guests arriving at the castle. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. And yet there it was. There it was. There was even some sort of curious impromptu musical number breaking out before the castle gates. That was odd, but such things happened in Equestria from time to time, or so he had heard. Having sequestered himself away all day to catch up on his duties as Grand Veneer, as pointless and powerless as that title really was, he had purposely avoided any chattering or rumoring of the gala prank he had been certain was being planned at his expense. He had even thought of it as a gay little game. He would overhear some servant talking about the gala tonight, and it would be an exercise in self-restraint to keep from correcting or disciplining the little pawn. The gala was yesterday, it was over, and it had been a flop. Blue Blood had even waited patiently for the angry and shocked letters of those who had sought his patronage, now demanding he do something about the debacle, as if there was anything much he could do except to help assign blame, and direct it as much as possible away from himself. Yet no letters came, no word of insulted nobles demanding to see him, no nothing. Just like princess and gods, just like yesterday when they had expressly cleared the entire day's schedule. Suspiciously watching as the musical number outside died down, the Wonderbolts themselves beginning their scheduled performance, Blue Blood felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Aside from his actually getting some work done, formally approving yet another minor expansion to the borders of the Everfree, the entire day was a spot-on ringer for the day before. Now there was even a faux gala underway. Madness!
Lord Prince.
The gentle rapping on the door of his study would no doubt have caused the frayed rule to jump out of his cummerbund had he been wearing one.
Lord Prince, the princess has inquired your service at the gala. He has?
Blue Blood's rump hit a desk, scattering scrolls and maps onto the floor.
Yes, Lord.
The voice called, but didn't dare to barge in when unwelcome.
Are you well attended to enough? Are you well enough to attend? Yes.
He decided and raised his voice to be heard.
Yes, I will attend.
Pressing an ear up to the study door, he waited for the sound of hoofsteps to die down before opening the door. This was all simply too strange, too bizarre. Yet, rote and routine called to him. He descended down to the royal apartments and summoned his preferred servants, quietly stunned that he was going alone with what had to be an insane prank of some kind. Blue Blood went through the motions of being washed, groomed one last time, and finally fitted into his custom hoity dinner suit. At last, one of the nameless chamber fillies presented him with his reflection in a mirror. He looked perfect, of course, just perfect. Simply perfect.
Wait a sec. Chamberfield is?
Just people who work in his chamber, like his personal servants.
Oh, okay.
The same as yesterday. Late to the gala now, he endured the heralds announcing his arrival in the grand oratory. Normally, this would be a moment to relish, to stand before his peers and peers aspirant, and the cream of society and aristocracy, to have them look up and measure his presence as he descended to join them. Princesses
I
knew
cannot stand his ego. It's getting on my nerves now.
Princesses knew he had savored the moment yesterday, intending to play coy for a time before he formally began to mingle. It was all a display, after all. Repeat performance of it filled him with an unfamiliar unease and quickly concealed anxiety and confusion. He tried to remember what faces he had seen and recognized yesterday when he had been announced, but this was different than before. He wasn't arriving at the right time, the same time, and he saw some ponies missing and some extras present. One in particular. He ignored her for a moment and saw Celestia at the intersection of the stairs leading from the oratory to the menagerie, the three wings of the palace where the gala proper was being held. Next to the regal princess was a petite purple unicorn in a blue dress covered in 5 pointed stars. It took Blue Blood a moment to remember and realize that she had to be the bright student his aunt often waxed on about, usually in comparison to himself. Twilight Sparkle, if he recalled the name. The mare who was, he had been told, both a magical prodigy and the most certainly not a layabout, who would shirk her responsibilities to take a trip to the Clopagus.
The hell is that?
As if he
Oh,
did,
I get it. Never mind.
as if he did that every year instead of once his entire life. There, too, was the Master of Rivers with his wife, and the High Steward of the stables, and then there was her. Just as he remembered her from yesterday, which was much like today. She was a beauty to look at, to be sure. Pristine white coat, vivid violet mane with a distinctive and feminine curl, actual crystal slippers, and an intricate layered dress in shades of red and gold. And yes, she was looking at him with that exact same expression he had noticed at the other gala. The same gala? Wide-eyed, like she had found the prince of her dreams, he felt the cruel temptation then that he had before, but squashed it. Something was going on. Can you pause real quick?
Go.
Blue Blood screwed his eyes shut and made a beeline for Celestia. This couldn't be a game. This couldn't be a trick. That meant magic.
Prince Bluebird. Sorry, I got distracted by something.
That's okay. Celestia greeted him with a warm, welcoming smile, one that reminded him of when he was just a foal and she had found him wandering about her garden outside.
I'm happy to see you could make it. I was a bit worried when I heard you were in your study all day.
The implication being, it isn't like you.
Yes, well...
He stammered slightly, trying to think up an excuse.
There were matters that needed some immediate attention.
He quickly bowed his head in a public show of respect and deference.
Princess?
Celestia's smile was gracious, and as usual, she tried to skip through the formality.
This is my student, Twilight Sparkle.
She inclined her head toward the young unicorn mare. A little tentatively, Twilight extended her hoof.
Charmed.
Blue Blood said, taking a hoof and favoring the filly with a suave grin. His body and mouth were mostly working on automatic at this point. He needed to pull his aunt aside.
I've heard so much about you, Miss Sparkle. Likewise?
She clearly phrased it as a question. Not too much for social niceties, it seemed. Well, Celestia had painted her as a mare of magic and diligent academic study. Not that she mattered at the moment.
Princess.
He didn't dare cause a scene by calling her auntie anywhere near praying years.
I have a bit of a problem I would like to speak to you about.
He then added, leadingly,
In private. Nephew.
Celestia didn't have the same qualms, and her tone was just hinting at reproachful.
Whatever it is, I'm sure you can wait until later. After all, the guests have arrived. Tonight is a very special night. Let's not ruin with work. Just mingle a little and enjoy yourself. But
He tried to inject a little pleading into his voice.
Later, I promise.
Celestia put her hoof down, and he became silent. She shooed him off like a disobedient child.
Go, have fun.
Damn it!
Of course.
He acquiesced immediately, lowering his head.
Perhaps later.
Glancing over his shoulder, he saw that insufferable unicorn watching him. Her eyes were intelligent and calculating now, and not quite so blinded by awe and infatuation as before. All too cognizant of what had happened. The last time, Blue Blood gave one last farewell to the princess's little apprentice and retreated to the menagerie. A certain measure of sloth aside, Prince Blue Blood was not a fool, nor was he ignorant of the magic that was his birthright. There was something truly strange going on. This meant that it was best to observe, for the moment, so as to formulate a proper response. What happened before, and he felt a little sick thinking of things in this kind of weird loop, surely couldn't and wouldn't repeat itself if he just removed himself from the picture. Perhaps doing so would also reveal some clue. Perhaps doing so would just fix things by chance. The latter was realistically his best bet. The menagerie was a series of prominent rooms and adjoining salons. Each of the main chambers was named for a prominent constellation, the very same one that adorned the ceiling of each hall in the form of a great mural. Facing north was the Bear, east the Scorpion, and west the Hound. Within each individual menagerie, the walls were decked with the finest tapestries and frescoes. The most elegant of marble statues were on display, and stained glass windows provided a rich ambiance. Blue Blood mingled in the loosest sense of the word. Autopilot. His body switched to autopilot, doing what it had been trained to do. He hardly spared a thought for the mares in gentle coats he exchanged empty greetings and idle chit-chat with. He was looking for anything particularly strange. There had to be something off with this situation. He also did his best to seem occupied and keep that one unicorn mare from getting involved. There was no time to waste with her. In the northern menagerie, Ursay, one of the guests seemed to be causing a scene upon a stage. The perpetrator was a neon-pink mare whose legs seemed to have been replaced with springs. As gauche and out of place as that one seemed to be, there wasn't any overtly offensive magic about her. Plus, just how could an earth pony be involved in anything like this, whatever this was? The prince moved on to check on the eastern menagerie Scorpius. The smell of the grand banquet was alluring, but Blue Blood found his royal appetite blunted by the uncertainty of the situation. The eastern quarter of the gala, like the west, was partly open air and bordered the most public section of the gardens. The view of the night sky was particularly striking here, and sections of the colonnade had been prepared to allow guests to sit on the grass and relax while they ate. Everything seemed normal on this front, though as he made a more thorough look around, Blue Blood noticed that particular food vendor he had visited yesterday, if yesterday had been real. Either way, it and she were there now, exactly where they had been before. He snorted to himself at the common fare on display. It wasn't even a matter of price, the banquet being free. No noble pony with a sense of decorum would be seen indulging in such plebeian fare. It was shocking even to contemplate and remember that he, Blue Blood, had paid so little attention to his surroundings that he had partaken of such things.
I want to punch him in the face one more. Every sentence you read makes me want to punch him in the face a little bit more.
Luckily, no one seemed to remember about that other day except him. Satisfied there was nothing sinister going on, he elected to investigate the Western Menagerie Canis. This area was quite popular, as it included the VIP Wonderbolt section of the party. It also had a very well-stocked bar. Yet here, too, everything seemed normal. Ponies were chatting and enjoying themselves. That puddle on the floor was still present as well. Really, were the staff slacking or what? Inexcusable. Yet it was beneath him to remind one of them while the party was in full swing. He would have seen it to it tomorrow, but there could well be no tomorrow. It was soon after all this that the commotion began. There was a shout, a crash from the menagerie Ursae, and a mad rush of critters of all shapes and sizes. A frightening buzzard swooped low, forcing Blue Blood to throw himself to the floor. Yes, this was what had really driven home the end of the gala. Once again, the palace guard were all gone. Once again, there was the sound of breaking statuary, and the panicked bemoaning of guests as they rushed pell-mell from the crazed animal horde. Once again, Auntie had disappeared. For a second time, the gala was ruined. Yet, as he dusted himself off, Blue Blood found himself watching the surroundings with a strange calm, a certain detachment. He had seen it all before. The surprise was gone, yet he wasn't resigned either. He was curious, confused, perplexed. It was like watching a painting being made, knowing already what it will look like. The fascination was in the technique, not so much the end result. In an apathetic daze, he quietly retired to his room in the royal apartments.
And the loop starts again.
A hoof reached for the gilded gold and silver radio, fumbling for a moment before turning it off. Blue eyes opened warily. Blue Blood inhaled, exhaled, and sat up in bed. He looked down and saw the same sheets. He was even waking up in the same position. The song from a moment before still crawled unwanted in his ears, echoing in the sleepy morning lucidity of his brain. Sliding out of bed, he took a moment to look outside. The grand garden stretched out below, and he could see the old groundskeeper already up and working. That's my job. Already up and working, checking and fixing the hedgerows. It was a beautiful morning, and the risen sun was shining brightly on another glorious day in Contalot. Another glorious day. Ringing the same bell to summon the same servants, Blue Blood began his morning routine. It just wouldn't do to arrive at breakfast looking disheveled. He was the prince, after all, the one member of the royal family who wasn't immortal, the one member of the family who couldn't command the sun and the moon. He had powers of his own, yes, but not the sort that would wow in the masses of Equestria, peasant noble. At the least he could do what little he did wasn't good. On a lark, he spoke to the servant fillies of this morning.
The
The gala is tonight.
That's me. That's
Oh,
me.
sorry.
The gala is tonight.
He stated it with a sigh.
Isn't it?
The two exchanged surprised and unsure looks. They weren't used to conversations with him, and weren't in trouble. A second or two of silence followed before one of them dared to answer, a light blue filly with soft red mane.
Yes, my prince.
She hesitantly lied.
How nice.
He said it without emotion, and held up his right hoof.
Continue.
Like before, but not quite like before. He hardly paid attention as they finished with him. Soon he was presentable, dressed, and ready for breakfast. The castle was the same as always, except now it was the same as always. Blue Blood felt a shiver run through his frame as he entered the dining hall and saw everyone just where they were before, eating the same things as before, chatting about the same things as before. He blinked hard and felt a
What do you
rush of
blink
relief
hard?
as he realized, I don't know, you strained your eye, I don't know. Celestia was here, now. He would ask her now. Well, not quite now. He didn't want to make a scene, but soon. Very soon. Soon. A servant came by, and he placed an order for tea, with milk and a dish of freshly imported yucca. It was tasty in itself, but it was refined and expensive. He'd been hoping to start a trend with it. He also had a client doing business in the plant. There was that too, but it also brought back pleasant memories.
Prince Blueblood.
A cultured voice spoke up, just like before, and the time before that.
Proper place.
The prince greeted the royal chamberlain and officer of the household. He was present with his aide. Neither of them had the faintest idea that Blue Blood already knew that the esteemed unicorn was about to say.
I trust you're looking forward to this evening's gala. I heard you heard from the Cancelot Chamber Orchestra Company. I look forward to the rendition of Entering the Princess of the Sunlight. It will be quite fitting.
He replied, glancing across the long table.
Once the princess shows up, and if nothing goes wrong before that.
Strangely, Princess Celestia chose that moment to cover a small smile with a sip of tea, one of her ears twitching. Aha! Blue Blood wanted to yell. Either you know what's going on, or you planned that mischief in the first place. Ah, bloody ah! Naturally, he said not a word of it. Instead, he listened quietly to the conversations around him. Normally, he just tuned it out, only paying attention if it was something immediately or obviously important. This time he really listened. Of particular note was what Celestia and Luna were whispering about, though it was mostly the former whispering and the latter listening. Eventually Luna finished her drink and her dinner and excused herself to rest for the day. Blue Blood took that opportunity to speak up.
Auntie,
dang it,
Auntie,
he said, comfortable using the word "ye" among the household and servants.
I would like to have a moment of your time, if I may.
The serene princess was unreadable and affable, as usual.
Of course, nephew. What seems to be the matter?
He coughed politely.
I would rather discuss it in private, if I may. You may.
She permitted, which meant not now, but quite soon. Bluebird waited and listened and prayed.
So, if I understand you correctly,
Celestia said, craning her neck in bemusement.
You are repeating the same day study for when you wake up? Yes.
Blue Blood replied, blushing a little at how silly his story sounded. Fortunately, it was just the two of them alone in her sitting room. It was among the most elegant of apartments in the palace, as befitting the Princess of the Sun. It was here that she entertained private guests, heads of state, ambassadors, and other ponies and personages of high honor and status. The entire room seemed to give off a soft, gentle glow. Celestia was not one for finery in the strictest sense of the word. Instead, or at least for the last few centuries, her preference had been for a simple, dignified, yet majestic aesthetic.
And ending after you go to sleep after the gala. Yes.
The regal alicorn raised a wing to briefly cover her smile.
And no one realizes except for you? Again.
Blueblood replied.
Yes.
Celestia gave a thoughtful sound as she pondered his words and his situation.
I must say, my sweet little nephew.
Blueblood's heart leapt at the assurance that his all-knowing aunt had the answer to his problem, like all problems. She gave him a serious look.
I just don't see where this joke is headed.
Blueblood's face fell and he nearly collapsed forward into his hooves.
This is no prank.
He actually raised his voice. Just a little.
Auntie, please.
He lowered his head, all but groveling.
I'm not playing a joke, I'm being serious. Nephew.
Celestia began and gently lifted his eyes with her hoof under his chin.
You're clearly distraught, but no magic on a question could have that effect you describe. Even Discord himself could have cast such a spell.
Her eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second.
Probably. The gala will be a disaster.
He vowed, looking up at her and willing her to believe him.
Really? Oh yes.
He warned.
Cats will fly and animals will be rampant. You'll disappear and...
He deflated.
And it'll just be ruined.
He finished, not even knowing all that went wrong with the gala and how. Even with him avoiding that unicorn, things had gone downhill, and Celestia, his great aunt Celestia, didn't seem to care. Blueblood hung his head in defeat.
And you probably already knew that.
He realized.
You give me too much credit.
The Princess of the Sun cooed gleefully.
The fun in life is not knowing what's going to happen. The Wizard of Spawn is released to a little nonsense now and then.
Still, her good mood did falter a bit.
But I'm surprised. How did you know? I've seen it happen.
He answered with a frown.
Twice.
For a few pregnant seconds, the two royals, Alicorn and Unicorn, sat in silence.
Nephew,
Celestia finally said, placing a compassionate hoof on his shoulder.
you are free to search the loyal rivalry for an answer, but I think the problem isn't magic. The problem,
She tapped his chest.
it's in here. Or maybe here.
She added, gently rapping her hoof against his forehead.
Perhaps you should see a specialist.
For the second time, Blue Blood's spirits sunk, and this time they took his face with them as it planted into the cushions on the floor.
Auntie!
Celestia's personal physician and apothecary, Willowbark, was a learned and much-esteemed graduate of her school for gifted unicorns. She had
To be
remarkable...
completely honest, I will think that Celestia will take him with a little more seriousness, but then again, maybe she's she's just letting him go that way on purpose.
Maybe she's like, about time something happened to this prick.
Yes.
Blue Blood watched her back. She had a remarkable penchant for all forms of medicine, traditional, holistic, and magical. Blue Blood watched her back as she stared at a series of arcane sigils that had materialized on sheets of paper. This sort of magic he didn't understand himself. He just hoped whatever Willow saw, it was something useful, good or bad.
I see.
I see. Son of a gun. The pale-coated unicorn mare muttered, her hoof rubbing absently against the pocket of her lab coat.
I see. Well?
Blue Blood snapped, growing impatient, just sitting on place within the circle of runes and salt.
What do you see? What's wrong with me? Is it parasites? Oh god, it's parasite. It's in my brain, aren't they? No, not parasite. Not parasite.
Not parasites, parasites. Different.
Sorry.
Willowbark assured him, finally turning around to look him in the eye.
Nor is it lesions, concussions, or infractures. You're in perfect health, Prince Blueblood. Then what do you see?
He repeated, impatience making him ruder, or at least snarkier.
I see that you had your Winston team removed.
Willow exclaimed.
But I scheduled you for another week. Next month. No.
No!
I'm not sure who's talking. Are you
That's
sure
you.
our zebra hasn't cursed you? Quarantine Center 1 hasn't.
Blue Blood answered, left eye twitching.
Well, sir, I can't detect any scent of magic coming from you, harmful or otherwise.
The response came not from a physician, but from one of Blue Blood's own trusted subordinates. Not without his own resources, he had immediately left the castle and called together, by fiat and demand, every learned scholar in his employ he could find. Unfortunately, most learned scholars under his employ were versed in magic rather unrelated to pony physiology or psychology. Hence why Blue Blood currently sat wet and miserable in a tub of magic-suppressing water, with an enchanted blinder and cap preventing use of his horn. He was personally de-enchanted in every way possible. There wasn't a shred of magic left that wasn't his own natural energy field, a beeping machine of strange earth pony construction, whirred and hissed and vomited out a ream of paper covered with scratched lines.
I want you to be sure.
The demand came from a prince of Equestria. Blue Blood's underling just quirked an eyebrow.
We've done all we can to make you magically natural, sir. I'm not moving an inch. But sir, what about the gala? The gala can go straight to...
Click. Blue
and the
Blood
loop
forced
repeats.
himself.
And the loop starts again.
Blue Blood forced himself out of bed with a long, slow sigh. Well, that hadn't worked. Outside was the same as before, another beautiful early morning. Inside was the same as before, the chime of the bell, the summoners' servants, sunk a pit into the prince's royal stomach. The pair met him in the antechamber, and just like before, they helped him get groomed and dressed for the day. One couldn't simply attend breakfast looking like a damned slob, after all. Eyes open, he watched the two chambermaids for once.
The god is tonight,
he asked, directing the question at neither of them in particular.
isn't it?
The two mares exchanged looks just like before. Blue Blood noticed one looked particularly nervous, while the other seemed mostly surprised. It was the latter filly who eventually replied, the light blue mare with pinkish-red mane.
Yes, my prince. How very nice.
He groaned and peered more closely at the filly. Normally he wouldn't have cared, but since he was talking to her anyway, he couldn't help but be a little curious.
What's your name? Like that, sir.
She bowed her head respectfully.
And you?
He asked the other mare, the unicorn filly with a dark brown coat and straw-colored mane. She lowered her eyes and dipped her head.
Speak up already.
He commanded.
God damn it, dude. Excuse her.
Light Touch interrupted, trying to still sound deferential.
She doesn't talk much. Her name is Sandy. Wonderful.
He deadpanned.
Well, might as well get me ready for my big, wonderful gala day. Announcing his highness piece of Equestria and Grand Vizier Lord Blueblood of the House Blueblood.
This time he went to the gala. Why? He wasn't even sure. Not that it mattered, but he went anyways. He didn't try to avoid her either. In fact, after taking note of the musical number at the castle gates, he waited in the royal oratory, chatting with two business ponies from Manhattan. One eye on the clock, he took note of when she entered the room, looking about at the many noble personages with a mixture of nervousness and self-confidence. She was She was clearly certain she could fit in if given the chance. She looked the part, like a true lady of the court. Blue Blood remembered how they had met before outside by the garden. Experimentally, he lingered longer than before among the gathered ponies, waiting to ascend the stairs and meet Princess Celestia. The purple ponies, Twilight Sparkle, was up there too, hanging by his aunt's side. Blue Blood wondered for a moment if she planned to just hang around Celestia all night. She didn't seem like the type who wanted to reinforce her own position by flaunting a close relationship with the princess.
Oh my god, are you... Just keep
What?
going.
Did I
No,
say something?
no, it annoys me the fact that he thinks she's doing that because of that reason and not spending time with Celestia. It
No,
really
he's
gets...
saying he doesn't think she's the type who would do that.
Right, but that's the first thing that came out in his head.
Whatever. By flaunting her close relationship with the princess and the snouts of the nobles and lords, what was she up to?
Spending
Yeah,
time
he
with
put that question on the
spending time with her teacher, you dumbass.
Well, he doesn't know that.
It pisses me off. Just keep going.
Rarity. Rarity was demurely mingling on her own, but he could see her keeping a discreet eye on him. Not particularly caring just how much his decision would end up bringing ruin to the gala, Blue Blood graced her with a small, polished smile. Excusing himself, he headed for the rose bushes. It would just be a few minutes, and then he'd catch her coyly sniffing a rose and use it to introduce himself just like before. If the gala wanted to screw with him, he could screw with the gala. Old habits, it was said, die hard. He
That is true.
intended to enjoy. Yes, there it is. He'd intended to enjoy himself, to not care one whit about the end of the gala. He'd proven harder than he thought in his heart. He wanted the gala to be a success. He wanted the power and prestige of being a patron to successful clients. He wanted supplicants to approach him, begging to be given a hoof in the door for next year. He wanted compliments for his contributions to this most high society of all events. He
What
wanted things to go...
contributions? Like, they never say what contributions, but whatever.
He's very wealthy, so it's assumed that he donated something.
Hmm.
To the most high society of all events. He wanted things to go his way. He wanted... Well, it didn't seem fate... It seemed fate didn't care what he wanted.
No one does, dude. Get used to it.
At the least, however, he wanted to not have to lament the disaster to come. Yet it was always there in the back of his mind. Contrary to what he had expected, being around Rarity didn't make it easier. It made it harder. Despite being his charming self and having quite a little fun at her expense, the mirth of watching her expression fall as he took the rose she had clearly expected him to give her for himself, and then her ruining a dress with its spill, and
Wait,
then
wait,
making
wait.
him pay that for that carnival food, which he ate just for the fun of following through on repeat. It was all so stupidly hollow. 2 days ago he'd been laughing inside at what he could put her through. Now it was only stale as rotten millet.
Wait, so he was doing that just to poke fun at her?
At this point, yeah, because this is like 8 days that this
No,
has
but,
happened
but
in a row.
isn't he saying that he has done this before? That was the whole reason he did that. He did that in the first place.
No,
That's
he's
what.
saying that's why he's doing it now.
No, it said all habits die hard.
Eh, I suppose we'll never know.
Ugh. But still, this
The
isn't
cake,
canon, so yeah.
the cake hit his face, and Blueblood realized he didn't care. At least this time the walls didn't come crashing down, not until after the animals attacked and everybody turned to blind panic. No, Blueblood just watched and counted as 20,000-bit tapestries ripped free and fell to the ground. A million-bit sculpture of Luna inlaid with gold shattered. And then finally, single-piece marble pillars, each a priceless original
Okay,
from
that
the old
accent is
castle,
you're accentuating the accent way too much.
toppled. Snorting, a bit of apple cake dribbled down his
God
nose
damn
to his
it!
upper lip.
You're doing it on purpose now.
Instinctively, his tongue darted out to wipe away the frosting and flakes. It actually wasn't that bad. Prince Blueblood, royal scion of Equestria, illustrious veneer and mark of stupid little lines on maps, sighed as he drank. He'd retreated to the Wonderbolt VIP lounge as soon as the gala started. He didn't even want to
So
see
this is another day.
Yep.
Okay.
He didn't even want to see Rarity or any other familiar faces. Over and over he had been through that mess. He didn't want to know. He didn't want to care. It was all just so pointless and stupid. Here he was, again, at the gala, again.
Hey, if it isn't the prince.
Blue eyes lifted from staring at his cup, finding bold gold and blue markings on a coat-tight suit. A Wonderbolt suit. It made sense. He was in the VIP lounge, even if it was just to put a wall between him and everything else in the gala. He'd been standing alone, purposefully so, but leaned back at the two guests. One was an electric blue stallion with a sloppy dark blue mane. The other was an attractive gold-coated mare with amber eyes and a shockingly bright orange mane. He knew these two. He'd paid for much of their paycheck tonight. More wasted bits. Not that it mattered anymore.
Prince Blueblood.
The female half of the duo had the grace to bow and elbowed her companion to do the same.
What a surprise to see you here. I suppose it is.
He replied, injecting a bit of his old self into his flagging spirits. One must look good, after all, even if one felt like a barnyard shit.
I'm Spitfire.
The mare kept her amiable tone.
And this is Sawyer. Are you...
Sawyer? That's not an R, that's an N.
Sorry. Soaring. Sorry. Are you...
She looked around, but only half-heartedly.
Are you waiting for anyone? If you want, we could get the Captain Thunderhead or Raging Storm. That isn't necessary.
He wasn't here to see either of the senior flight leaders.
Hey,
Soren spoke up with a familiar grin.
did you see the performance? What do you think?
Blueblood shrugged, the drink half finished and it half warm in his gut, granting him a comfortable indifference. Normally he would have showered the performers with praise, regardless of whether he meant it or not. Courtly life had taught him well to only speak ill of others behind their back.
Of course. It did the job.
He replied.
The crowd liked it. Well...
Spitfire seemed a bit surprised by the answer. She shared a quick look with Soren before turning her eyes back on the prince.
Did you like it? I said it did the job.
Blueblood repeated. The Wonderbolts weren't here at the gala to impress him. They were there to impress the guests.
You still haven't answered the question.
Spitfire pressed boldly, too. Since she was starting to get on his nerves, Wonderbolt or not, that wasn't particularly wise.
What you got there?
Soren asked, changing the question and gesturing to the drink. Before Blue Blood could answer, he wasn't even sure what he was drinking, but he was willing to just make an answer up. He noticed a duo of photographers hovering close by. Literally, they were Pegasi. Soren Spitfire noticed it too, and had the decency to blush a bit at the unwanted attention. There was a line of guests just waiting to have their picture taken with a famous young Wonderbolt duo.
It's hard to me to imagine Spitfire blushing.
Impatient guests. Yet the photographers were wary of interrupting when the two were in the presence of certain royal company. Even a little drunk, Blue Blood put things together. Seeing all three staring at them, one of the photographers got a bit bold and tried to step in.
Excuse me.
He began.
If you could just leave us.
Blue Blood ordered, suppressing a grin until the two Pegasi fled back to some other Wonderbolt stick around. Spitfire and Soren gave audible sighs of relief and smiled at him in thanks. It was ironic. He had hired those photographers too. The thought actually dredged a genuine laugh out of the sullen prince.
Thanks.
Soren said, scratching the back of his mane.
We haven't had a minute to ourselves all night.
Blue Blood asked.
You're quite famous. I hate parties like this.
Spitfire explained with a grin, suspecting that maybe he did too. And the truth was, now, he kind of did. At least this one specific gala.
I mean, yeah, we're famous, but our fans are out there.
She pointed to the gardens.
Not in here.
It took Blue Blood a second to realize she wasn't pointing at the gardens, she was pointing past them, out into the streets of Canterlot and beyond. He turned his head to gaze out there. Slowly, he returned to Soren and Spitfire.
You want to get out? You want to get out of here?
Spitfire asked, and Soren grinned widely.
Yes, why not?
Wonderbolts or not, he was a proud and noble prince of Equestria. Such a place was beneath him. Blue Blood took a certain perverse pleasure in going inside anyway. He had heard of such establishments, dives and pubs and gathering places for riffraff. It wasn't quite as scandalous as entering a house of ill repute, but it was far worse than he had ever dared to do before. No doubt the tabloids would be all a-Twitter with the news. Ha! As if.
What is ill repute? I do not understand stock-up talking.
Repute is like a shortened word for reputation. So ill repute would be something with a bad reputation.
Yeah.
Soren and Spitfire had shed their Wonderbolt uniforms, and he had thrown his hoity exclusive dinner jacket into the bushes outside. No one had dared question any of them. They had just walked out of the party. Just walked out. Blue Blood still couldn't quite believe it. Leaving the castle grounds had, at first, filled him with a certain trepidation. Canterlot was a clean city, but there were more than a few ways to get truly dirty out here. There also weren't any servants or guards to call on, unless one counted the two Wonderbolts themselves, both of which had at least some military training. It took a little while, but finishing off another drink had calmed his nerves enough to relax more properly. He had all but reared when Spitfire suddenly jumped up and tousled his mane, his precious mane, to better hide his identity. It was shocking, scandalous, improper. His perfect mane was one of his finest features, not that he liked to discriminate. The whole, of course, but all his other features were equally perfect and all tied in second place.
Now you're ready to hit the town.
Wonderbolt had declared, elbowing him playfully.
This is the place.
Soren declared as they approached the business. They delved into the merchant district, not the seedy part, mind you, the new money rich part of Canterlot. The bar wasn't even particularly lowbrow, it was just so unaristocratic. It catered to rich and middle-class working ponies. They were a social strata below proper landed nobility. Getting inside was actually due to the Wonderbolts, who, with two security ponies, recognized. They did not even recognize their beloved prince. Blue Blood wasn't sure whether he was more shocked or disgusted by this, or even a little thrilled. Anonymity was so alien. They paid just to have a private booth. After that, he offered to pay for the drinks. He was rich, after all, and it wasn't like it mattered. No one but he would remember the money he threw away tomorrow. They began with a round of the house's most expensive vintage cognac. Soren and Spitfire were full of stories of their years flying together. They had attended young flyers camp together, and their parents had put them in the same class in a gifted flyers program. Soren, from a middling family in Cloudsdale, had entered the Territorial Air Guard for a time to get into the Wonderbolts. Spitfire, from a richer family, had learned from a tutor and then become one. They met again in the Wonderbolts boot camp and became inducted in consecutive years. Now they flew together, living their dream. After listening to them, Blueblood wished he had a story like that. As much as he racked his brain, he simply didn't. He had been tutored since he was a foal. He really had neither peers nor friends. The only colleagues he had were the other secretaries and ministers of the royal household. He thought instead about telling a raunchy story about Princess Celestia. Auntie was the one with the interesting and eternal life. Either that or he could make something up, change some names around. Before he could, however, he noticed the two Wonderbolts glancing back at the door. A cyan blue Pegasus in a gala dress had someone managed to talk or bull her way inside. She was Spitfire size and body type, but clearly a few years younger. Her dress, a rainbow-coloured affair, had gotten dirty from the descent from Castle Canterlot. The billowy white clouds behind her now streaked with bits of brown and black.
This ought to be good. It's,
Soren clearly remembered this filly, but not her name.
Rainbow Dash, I think.
Spitfire corrected him with practiced ease.
I guess you follow us.
The Wonderbolt turned to Blueblood.
Is it alright if...
He shrugged. 2 Pegasi 3, it didn't matter. Style as hell, that may as well become his new motto. Spitfire got up and hustled over to greet the younger mare. The filly seemed relieved to have not made her little trek in vain, and pointing back at their booth, Spitfire seemed to invite her over. Blueblood couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the look of absolute adulation and fangirl-like pleasure that this new Pegasi radiated. Another gala reject, he couldn't help but think, like all of us here, I suppose.
Kinda cute, isn't she?
Soren leaned over the booth's table to whisper. Blueblood could only stare back at the Wonderbolt. A grin firmed his lips.
Spitfire wow, Spitfire said that.
Soren laughed easily. So damn easily.
Not her.
He leaned back to tuck his legs under him in his seat.
Rainbow Dash, gotta remember that.
Soren muttered to himself.
I totally suck with names. I don't see how could you forget.
He drolly replied.
She's named after her college scheme.
A few seconds later, then this Rainbow Dash was seated opposite, Spitfire having cannily switched seats and his sides. She introduced herself, a childlike glee for the Wonderbolts dissipating a bit as she reached out to shake his hooves.
So you're the prince, huh?
She asked, giving him a hard stare, like he was an otherworldly space pony.
I am the Prince of Equestria, yes.
Blueblood replied, glancing at the Pegasus' hoof with some disdain. She was hardly the most ladylike of mares, but considering the company and the circumstances, he shrugged and brusquely shook her hoof in his own.
Nice to meet you.
The multicolored filly shook back quite firmly.
I am Rainbow Dash, future Wonderbolt and one of the elements of harmony, but you probably already know that part. Yes, of course.
He lied. This was one of the elements of harmony? Of course he knew about the elements, in a general sense. He hadn't actually been
I find it a
told
bit
about...
weird that she would mention that, but... okay.
I mean, if you have 30 seconds to introduce yourself to someone and you've done something like that, I'm pretty sure you'd mention it.
Well, I think they never do in other episodes, but I guess I'll let it slide because it's the prince, so yeah.
Yes. He hadn't actually been told about the bears of them, or if he had, he'd promptly forgotten.
Of course.
It didn't seem like it mattered. It had nothing to do with him or with his tedious work, and the elements themselves were Auntie's pet project.
Excuse me?
He'd sort of assumed that the 6 mares they were bonded to had been kept somewhere close by for training or something. Deployment. It was strange seeing one as, well, as a mare.
Oh god, can I just want to punch him so bad.
And if this one was at the gala, then were the others as well? Could the elements also be the answer to his problem? It was something to consider.
Oh god. Oh god. I can see where this is going and it's gonna be hilarious.
His attention wandered for a bit as Dash regaled two of her idols with chatter about rain booms and chasing lightning and exotic weather phenomenon. It was typical Pegasus chat, kind of annoying, actually, since he doubted any of them would appreciate him gibbering about unicorn magic. There
He
was
has
some
a
interesting...
point.
Yeah, that's true. There were some interesting anecdotes behind and between the boasting, and Blue Blood just let himself relax. Another round of drinks, and then two more helped in that respect. They even all had a good laugh when Dash downed about 200 bits worth of Royal Stables brandy in a single gulp, leading
Jesus.
to much coughing and repeated assurance of, "I
I
can
can handle
handle
it.
it."
It's cool.
It was so mundane and pedestrian. But the prince couldn't help but marvel that there was a certain intoxication, not just to the actual physical intoxication, but to being so carefree. A dozen paparazzi could burst in cameras flashing, and he wouldn't bat an eye laughing in their faces. None of it mattered, and he was starting to wonder if that was really such a bad thing.
Hey, Blue Blood, sorry. Oh, sorry.
So Soren pounded his hoof on the table.
Let's hear something for you, man. Story, story. Yeah!
Dash quickly joined in, also stomping a gold-slippered hoof.
Let's get a story from the prince.
Spitfire just smiled at him.
Come on, you know you want to. You want a story, is that it?
He didn't really have that many options. He didn't have any tricks to tell of. He didn't think anybody would be excited to hear about backroom deals or political scheming or map-making.
Political scheming. Okay, whatever. Story, story, story. If you insist, if you insist.
He held up a hoof for some silence. His thoughts were already a bit murky. A cheering section just made it worse. He did have one semi-good story to his name.
Do any of you know where Clopagos are?
The three Pegasi returned questioning stares.
I suppose not.
Blue Blood continued with a sigh.
There is islands in the far in there is islands far to the south, tropical island, equatorial.
Just real quick, the S is silent. It's pronounced island.
Sorry.
That's okay. You didn't know. Nobody's mad.
No,
Well, I'm
not.
not mad. I don't know about the
I'm
viewer.
not mad.
He shook his head, tried to focus.
Anyway, some Pegasi wanted permissions to go down there to collect some wild cloud samples. They came to me for money and found the trip. You know, since
He tapped his flank, and the compass rose there.
it it was on the no-fly list, I got things together and even went down myself. I thought of his application. I considered liked on a beach, far from Catalot, far from Auntie. You know, while the Pegasus did all the actual work.
He smirked at that.
There was one mare, though.
He looked longingly at the ceiling.
On the last day down there, she came down to the beach. We talked. We had a few drinks of the exotic fruit. Then we swam in the water and made love like sea ponies.
The Prince of Equestria sighed.
Well, that was a good guy. What couldn't I say? Why couldn't? Sorry. Well, that was a good day. Why couldn't this day be that day?
He stared into his drink, his voice becoming quiet.
Over and over again.
He paused, noticing the beet-red blushing of the mare opposite, hiding her cheeks behind her hooves. Soren was chuckling to himself, clearly having enjoyed the story. Spitfire leaned over and cleared her throat.
Well, I think it's romantic. Oh,
She
sorry.
gave him a teasing look.
In the water, You guys,
Dash objected.
come on.
Me there is the way to go. Oh god.
Soren boasted, holding up his drink.
Nothing like it.
Bluebird snorted dismissively.
Pegasi. Live for the moment, man.
Soren finished off his drink and set it down on the table, grinning broadly all the while.
No regrets. Leave us the snow tomorrow.
The noble pony asked, staring across the table, and then to his side at the three accomplished flyers. He shook his head.
And what if there is actually no tomorrow? What then? Dude.
Why'd you stop?
Oh, sorry. If there's no tomorrow,
Rainbow Dash spoke up despite her embarrassment. She put her hooves on the table, her cheeks still blushing.
Dad, you can just do whatever you want today.
Her rose-colored eyes darted over to Soren sitting next to her.
Sounds kind of fun, actually.
The Wonderboy caught the stare and grinned cheekily.
You know what?
The Prince of Equestria made up his mind. He noticed Spitfire smiling at him. There wouldn't be any objections there, it seemed.
I think you're right.
That song. I ain't gonna sing it again.
Equestria.
No. A white hoof hovered, gently turning off the radio. A second later, and the bed-headed blue blood sat straight up. A quick glance to side didn't reveal any company.
Well,
Everything was the same, not even a hangover. Everything was the same.
I guess we know what he did last night.
I'm not saying anything.
Can I say it?
Nope.
Damn it.
Running his hooves through his hair, Bluebird laughed and laughed and laughed.
Yes, good morning, Cantaloupe.
Hopping out of bed with a spring in his step, he pulled open the curtains to take a good look at the morning. And what a beautiful, carefree morning it was. Today was the day, a fresh new day of infinite possibilities and no consequences. Ringing the bell for his chambermaids, he waited for them with an almost giddy smile.
Light touch,
He pointed to the blue-coated mare.
right?
Still you.
No. Oh, just a quick brush over. Just get out the nose. I'm going natural today. But sir,
Light Touch very nearly protested.
we're told to. It doesn't matter.
He said that with almost dash-like glee. He really had to thank that little filly sometime.
Just a quick brushing. If you insist, sir.
Light Touch relented. And if Blue Blood wasn't mistaken, he actually caught Sandy smiling a bit too. Perhaps his mood was infectious.
Hello, auntie. Hello, auntie.
He greeted the princesses and the dour-also ponies around the table. He singled out one princess in particular.
Quite the morning today. I don't think I've seen the sun this radiant in years. Oh, why, thank you, Blue Blood.
Celestia took the compliment with due decorum while still seeming visibly pleased. Taking his seat, he noticed Proper Place staring at him. The old unicorn looked lost for words.
Before you ask,
Blue Blood gleefully held up a hoof to cut the old advisor off.
I am looking forward to the gala tonight. Yes, I did hire the Canterlot Chamber Orchestra to play with us. I've heard the narrations of entry of the Princess Sunlight is wonderful to behold.
Knowing the servant was within speaking distance even before she got there, he continued.
Tea, with milk and ginger, nothing else. I'm going out this morning. You are?
This time, to his surprise, the question came from Luna. It was also spoken more than a little loudly.
We mean,
She repeated more quietly.
you are. Oh, sorry, I got confused. You are?
The dark alicorn gave him a curious look.
You never did so before. That's quite true.
Celestia agreed.
Things change.
Blue Blood assured them, laughing softly at his own private joke.
Things change.
Of course. The song and dance before the gates of Canterlot was half finished when a carriage rolled up. This was no ordinary means of conveyance, however, studded with jewels and glittering, swirling interlaced rivers and streams, and imported from halfway across the country. It was long enough to carry a dozen ponies or more, with room to spare. A collective gasp sucked the air from the varied revelers about to enter the castle grounds, and every head and every pair of eyes turned to stare. Royal guards dressed in expensive tuxedos hurried to the flank the doors of the stretch carriage. A cream-colored leg emerged first, teasingly, tantalizingly, sporting a sparkling slipper that probably cost more than the ponies made in a year. It was followed soon after by the pony of Pop herself, Sapphire Shores. No mere dress would do for the sensation, and instead
What is he going to do now? I'm a bit scared.
she appeared in an intricate French-made outfit,
Wait, what?
as saucy as it was ridiculously overpriced.
That's hilarious.
Tiny diamonds caught the light along the lace filigree as the pony superstar emerged, lighting her up the center of the universe. A step behind her, Blue Blood reveled in the scene he was making. Gone was the proper dinner suit. Instead, his flanks scintillated with rhinestones, the silver spurs on his cowboy boots jingling. He'd expressly purchased the most gaudy, tacky, inappropriate, and expensive ensemble within 1,000 miles. A blue silk scarf and cowboy hat completed the other utterly atrocious look. Sapphire Shores loved it.
This is hilarious.
Further proof in Blue Blood's mind that he had done well in picking something truly terrible. The effect could not be argued with. 100 ponies stood stunned, staring at the pair. The spotlight hadn't just been stolen. It had been put in a safe, locked with a key. The key had then been buried, and a house had been built over it.
Oh, I get it.
But nothing at all compared
you
to
get
the
it?
look of shock. Yes, I got it. Nothing at all compared to the look of shock on Auntie Celestia's face when she saw the duo walk through the gate. Priceless. Beyond priceless. Blue Blood chose that moment to propose to the pony of Pop. Let her be the princess of Pop. Sapphire was the perfect partner in crime. She didn't even mind when accepting they began to make out right in the center of the royal oratory.
What the... This is great.
Blue Blood began the day with a banquet. No, not just a banquet, a feast. He began the day with a feast. When asked what he wanted for breakfast after giving it a moment's thought, the esteemed prince had answered,
I don't know. One of everything you got, I suppose.
The table had been momentarily stunned silent, broken only by wary, uncomfortable laughter.
No, really.
Blue Blood had repeated.
One of everything.
One or two stuttering protests aside, together with a yes, of course.
Yes, of course I pay for it. No, Auntie, it won't go all to waste.
The table was soon laden with every treat imaginable. Those that were not freshly produced by the castle staff were brought from pastry shops and high-class establishment in the city proper. Blue Blood didn't mind waiting. It wasn't about the food, it was the spectacle. No doubt suspecting that a nephew was intending to indulge in the family tradition of epic trolling, Celeste had stuck around just long enough to grasp the extent
I can't believe he
of his
actually
madness.
used that word on the thing. That's hilarious.
Of course. Celeste had stuck around just long enough to grasp the extent of his madness. She had even partaken in a few of the freshly arriving treats, seeing it as something of a challenge to keep up with him. For an hour or more, the two royals played a deadly game of caloric chicken, their waistlines and cholesterol levels and pride on the line. Blue Blood considered it a point of disgusting gluttonous pride to outlast Equestria's immortal princess of the sun. Eventually, minus the servants, only one pony remained at the table. Auntie Luna had remained silent the entire time, watching as her sister and nephew gorged themselves like the ancient hedonists of old. Despite normally turning in to rest after a long night guiding the moon, Luna remained even after Celestia left. Blue Blood began to wonder if she was simply fascinated by seeing one pony stuff himself on such a vast array of sweets. He hadn't seen her eat any herself.
Rather disgusting, isn't it?
Finally, the Princess of the Moon speaks.
Allow me to disagree.
He replied, raising his voice to ensure she could hear him. He held up a frosting-crowned confection.
These cupcakes, as you call, they're quite delicious. We are referring to your behavior.
Luna's voice projected easily across the table. He knew that spell.
It's rather atrocious. All in the eye of the beholder.
Using the same spell to project his own voice. To drive the point home, he scooped up a dollop of cream with a fresh strawberry, placing it on his tongue with an indulgent grin. Luna's face scrunched up in distaste. A second later, she did tentatively levitate over a small round breakfast treat, a donut, they were called. Blue Blood had never condescended to try one before. That one had sprinkles.
Gluttony is a vice we never seen consumed more than a few ponies.
Luna told him, nibbling at the donut experimentally. As always, she was prim and proper, the perfect princess. Albeit loud, she was old-fashioned, like he had been.
I'm not worried about that.
He assured her, floating over a donut of his own and eating it in one bite.
We find it hard to believe. In our expertise, in our experience, you appeared to care a great deal what our daughters think of you.
Luna took a small bite of a pastry, smiling as she found it to her liking.
Our sister in particular.
Blue Blood frowned at the observation.
Yes, well...
Sorry, he glanced away to try and find something new to try.
Not anymore.
Luna was silent for a time as she finished her donut.
So you say.
She replied, standing up to leave. Her guards quickly moved to her flank as she left.
Yet
She added over her shoulder.
we can't help but find your desire for attention rather pathetic. We will leave you to your repast. Wow.
Blue Blood followed the alicorn with his eyes before staring at a plate of sweet cakes, layered in a rainbow of colors and jam. He willed the fork to take a bite, but found his appetite, with his audience, gone. Raising a napkin to the corner of his mouth, he wiped away a smudge of jelly. How did that old bat know anyway?
No, what did a little bad know anyway?
Oh, okay.
Prince Blueblood. Proper place. You look well. Yes, thank you. I trust you're looking forward to this evening gala. Oh God, I got how many times am I gonna have to say this? I heard you hire from the Cantolos Chamber Orchestra Company. I look forward to the rendition of Entry on the Princess Sunlight. As do I, Chamberlain. As do I.
Blue Blood tried to eat his usual tea with milk and ginger. It always helped to wake him up. As for the rest, he still had little appetite for much of anything. Not that he wasn't hungry. It was the same as every morning. He just couldn't quite look at the plates of food the same
How
way.
many loops are we on? Like 5, 4?
I don't know. No, it's a lot more than that. Out of curiosity, he beckoned over his servant and requested an identical serving to what Celestia had, the oats and apples he had always derided. It wasn't like it hurt to try. As things wound down, proceeding as they always did, the prince couldn't help but glance in the direction of his other aunt, the one he had never known, the one who had only entered the life of the court over the last year, who had done less than that, as few saw her outside of her nightly duty raising and lowering the moon.
Auntie.
Blue Blood spoke up, sensing he was almost out of time. Celestia immediately set her eyes on him, but it wasn't her he meant to address.
Auntie Luna.
He said again, and the Dark Princess gave him a nonplussed look, unused to being addressed when her sister was present.
What's it like to be immortal?
Next to her, Celestia raised an eyebrow at the question. Luna set her hooves against her chest and lowered her eyes.
Why are you asking that? I guess the bigger question is,
Bluebird continued, raising his chin.
when you're destined to live forever, what do you do with your life? I mean, besides what you have to. How do you live with it?
Like before, it took a second or two for Luna to really determine how to respond.
One simply does.
She answered, standing up to leave. He watched her go and sighed. That really wasn't the response he had hoped for.
Well, wow.
That was long.
That was
How long
long.
did that take? How long has it been?
Let me
What
check.
are we looking at here? 45 minutes?
There's
An hour?
45 minutes of the first, because we had to make a few counts. 45 plus 10 plus 20. That's about an hour and 10 minutes. 20 minutes.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
thoughts. What do you think?
I haven't seen the movie Groundhog Day, but now I really want to.
You should. It's pretty good.
I'm sure it is.
So, top of the pick. What do you think?
I find it interesting how they're experimenting, Blue Blood now having this sense of, this feeling of he doesn't care anymore because he is finding that for whatever reason the situation he's currently in has presented him with a situation where
There are
he
not
no longer has
consequences.
consequences for
Yes.
his actions, at least for the time being. There's also the thing is, I wonder if he has, at least as far as the story's concerned, I wonder if he has somewhere in the back of his head the inkling of an idea. What if this stops tomorrow? Like what if I wake up tomorrow and
I think by
this
by the point we
stopped?
finish in the story, he just assumed this is going to go forever. Because I think he asked that question because of that reason. Like he
Yeah, I agree. I kind of was thinking the same thing when he asked that of Luna is, why would he ask that? Well, probably because
you now think
he
he's going to
assumes
live
he's
forever.
going to be doing this forever, and
Yes.
he's going to fear. See, the other thing though is because there's a significant difference that I don't know if he recognizes, and that is Luna lives forever, at least in this head canon. Will live immortally in a world that goes on forever. However, Blue Blood is stuck in such a way that he's repeating the same
Yes.
day over and over and over again.
Right.
Each day he is presented with the exact same circumstances, and he has less than 24 hours to affect them in a way that will not continue onward into the next day.
Right.
He's basically, if he never does it correctly, he is doomed to repeat the same day endlessly until he has eventually played out every possible scenario.
That
And he will eventually become so bored
yes.
because, again, there's only so much you can do in the hours of the daytime.
Yes, because if this is going, I hope he takes it another way, because this is a minor spoiler for the movie. If you don't mind, can I say it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the movie, it gets to that's how the main character goes through this. Like the first, like he goes through certain stages. Like the first stage is this of like I can do anything. There's no consequences. Whatever that I do, it doesn't matter. So he literally does. Like he tries to get this one girl, and when he sees he can't get it, he literally like does anything he wants. And after that, he starts to get depressed because he's bored. He's literally bored. He can't do anything new. But I won't spoil you why. But the reason he gets bored, it's not he gets bored. It gets sad because of a reason. Like even though he can change anything, like he can do anything he wants. Some
He
things,
eventually realizes he's bored.
no, and some things can, and even then,
consequence.
some things can't change. Like there's a certain point, like for example, the gala being ruined is something that Blue Blood, for example, it's very, very, very likely that he can't change that, no matter how hard he tries.
Mm-hmm.
Because he will have to like have the number that things that happen for the party to be ruined is a huge amount of stuff, and he can't be everywhere at the same time, right? So
Right.
that's the point. Like there's certain things he isn't going to be able to change, no matter how much he tries, and at the same time, there's stuff that, as much as he can have fun with this scenario, there has to be a point where the fun that he has burns out. It's like it's like every single aspect of everything. Like if you have
Hang on real quick.
Yes.
Can I present a counter argument? Because this isn't the movie. See, what he has is he has the liberty and freedom of the Canterlot Castle, which includes freedom of the Canterlot Library. Eventually, he may discover, in repeating this over and over and over again, he may eventually discover and learn the discipline required to use the magic of, say, the Stas with the Beard time travel section. Let's say he travels backward in time during this 24-hour period. What would happen to this endless loop? Would it wait until it caught
That's
up
very
again?
interesting. Yeah, that's very.
Because
Your microphone is fucking up a bit.
Sorry, because there's an aspect of magic here that what the heck, that, doesn't exist in Groundhog Day.
Yes.
And so as a result, there's an infinitely larger amount of possibilities that could happen. It could throw the whole thing off.
Yes.
And
Actually,
ends up,
that
he
would be a
just
good. That would be
changes the day.
yeah.
stuck
That would be
repeating.
an interesting idea to see if they go that way. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
and I'm curious. Because you think about it, or he could just use it to learn everything he possibly could.
But then again,
Or-
at the beginning of the fake, there's the author's note that say that this is gonna focus on him and how he changes. It's not gonna focus on how the thing actually works.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see where do they change the development of Blue Blood, because if this is what the focus on the fig is going to be, like the Blue Blood and how he feels and how he acts, then it's going to be very interesting, even though we might get really confused with like how this thing works. But then again, in Groundhog Day they never explain what actually happens, so he might actually take it that way. Like they don't explain it, they just at one point, because he does something different and he's actually happy, the story ends, like the loop ends. So that might actually be the case, or might actually be when he actually changes himself to a point where he's actually a good person because he's an asshole.
Okay, well, so that is our reading of Chapter 1 of The Best Night Ever in the format of Groundhog Day.
And that took a long
And-
time.
Yes, it did take a very long time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank you.
those of you who have taken the time to sit with us.
Yes, we
We
really
really
do
do.
because that took a while. So, anything else
Anyways,
you want to add?
no, I would just end by saying, thank you for joining us in this reading, and we hope you enjoy the other readings we do. And if you have any feedback for us, be sure to leave it.
And also,
That's really all I have to say.
and we're also sorry for Led being a robot right now.
A robot.
Yes, because you sound completely weird and you started to sound like a robot.
And I am a robot.
Actually, you do. That's weird. Anyway, we will try to fix the microphone.
Mic problems.
We will try to fix his microphone for the next episode, and if we can, then we will have Led Robot through the whole thing. Then that will be interesting. Anyways,
I'm sorry, never gonna do that again.
see you later, Bronies and Pegasisters. Have a good night, or whatever.
Adios.
Adios.